Welcome back to the Dynasty Football Key. We're going to continue with the series ranking each position, and today we're starting with the tight end. So let's jump right into it. We've got Sam LaPorta as the tight end one after a very impressive rookie season. I don't have any reason to think that based on the age and the situation proving he can compete with the wide receiver one and Amon-Ra St. Brown, I have no reason to think that he can't continue to produce this next season. I really like what the Lions are doing overall as a team. They're in win now mode. They relied upon LaPorta very heavily, and I don't think that the draft coming up is going to be a threat to LaPorta this season. And we've got Sam LaPorta followed by Brock Bowers, the tight end two. He might be the next rookie to have one of those incredible seasons, and it really is a lot to ask for a rookie to have a monster season, and we've seen that it is possible. And one of the stats that I dropped in a recent video was that some of the prediction that you can have as far as success for a tight end is one of two things. Do they, in college fantasy football, produce a lot of fantasy points? Well, in 2022, Brock Bowers had 165 fantasy points, and he was the number one tight end that season. And in 2023, he had 116 fantasy points. And you'll see I have listed his college points per game. For the rest of the tight ends, I'll list their RAS score, but Brock Bowers didn't participate in most of the combine, so he doesn't have a RAS score. But RAS is that other factor, the relative athletic score, that really, if you're a tight end, you want to be above a 7 on that score, 7 out of 10. And if Brock Bowers had participated, I feel pretty confident he would have gotten above 7. But like I said, you just need to be have one of those two categories. Because since 2012, 54 out of 60 tight ends who finished in the NFL for fantasy as a top 5 tight end, they had one of those two characteristics of having a RAS score above 7 or college fantasy points that were really high. So I'll go ahead and say that he's projected to be a first-round draft pick in the real NFL, and pretty high top 10 is where we're looking at. If he goes to the Chargers, that'd be incredible. But really anywhere, I think his skill set can translate, because this guy can not only be used in the passing game and the blocking game, but also in the run game. So it can give some mismatches to the defenses trying to guard him. We'll go ahead on to the next tier. I've got Trey McBride at tight end 3, Kyle Pitts at tight end 4, and Dalton Kincaid at tight end 5. McBride really showed a impressive season as essentially the top target for Kyler Murray as he was returning this next season. So my only concern in 2024 is, how does McBride perform when they bring in potentially Marvin Harrison Jr., who's projected to go there at number 4 overall? Now, that would be a rookie player coming in. So I still believe McBride's going to be heavily relied upon in the passing game, and it won't all be thrust upon the rookie in their first season. Kyle Pitts, he's been up and down rankings just due to not producing for fantasy since he's been in the league. But look at that age. He's still younger than Dalton Kincaid, who was drafted last season, and the same age as Sam LaPorta, who was also drafted last season. So he's got a lot of experience for someone who is only 23 years old, coming into the league at 20 years old. I like Kyle Pitts. He was that really awesome prospect before Brock Bowers, and I still believe in what he can do. Dalton Kincaid, he was the first-round drafted tight end last season. He's with the Buffalo Bills, who have let go of Gabe Davis, and Dalton Kincaid could be that number 2 target for this team. We'll see what they do in the draft, but again, it would be a rookie. So for 2024, I think he could have a really good season, and that's enough to gain some experience that will carry on for many, many years to come. He's still only 24. He's got a lot left ahead of him as far as his career goes. And in the next tier B, TJ Hockenson at number 6, Mark Andrews, Evan Engram, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and David Njoku. I really like what these players have done. You can tell that there's a bit of an age jump in this range. You've got TJ Hockenson coming off of an ACL injury. Mark Andrews, he's actually one of the reasons that today, breaking news, was the NFL has banned the hip drop tackle, where a defender can run behind a receiver and just grab on and just drop their whole body. The whole weight of their body is now pulling on the lower half, and it's led to a lot of injuries. Mark Andrews actually happened to return in the playoffs, only got a couple catches. I think he'll be completely fine for this next season. He's been really good. The Ravens continue to draft first-round wide receivers. I believe 3 in a row they've drafted first-round wide receivers. And Andrews still ends up being the number one target there, very relied upon by Lamar Jackson. So I don't mind having Andrews be ahead of Hockenson due to the fact that Hockenson had a very serious knee injury. We expect him to come back, but we already saw Andrews return. Evan Engram, he was the tight end number 2 this past season and really came on late. He did not have a lot of touchdowns, and they let go of Calvin Ridley. They're the ones who ended up bringing in Gabe Davis. I still think Gabe Davis is more of a deep ball threat, not necessarily a possession receiver, and Evan Engram was getting a ton of targets. I don't expect that role to change this season. He has a long-term contract with them and a good quarterback. I like what Evan Engram can do. I would think that he's a good buy low since he was really always a highly touted prospect and only had that really good rookie season until this past season where he really took off. George Kittle's in a good spot with the San Francisco 49ers. Even though they didn't win that Super Bowl, Kittle is the founder of Tight End U, and really that they could make a statue at Tight End U for him and all of these Iowa tight ends that come out. I mean, he's just such a good player when it comes to the pass game, blocking, all of those things. There's a lot of competition for targets in that offense. That's the only issue with why his points per game is just generally has been lower than a lot of the guys in around the same age. Travis Kelce, one of the top scorers at the position. He is getting older. He's the oldest tight end that we'll have on this list. And it's really more so, when do you think you need to get out on Travis Kelce just for the value? If you're a rebuilding team, you're probably going to have to trade him away. It's about that time. Still, he's got the best quarterback in the game. They're going for a three-peat to build this dynasty. They're going to be highly motivated to have another good season. And just due to the lack of weapons, it's not a scenario where I think they rest Kelce most of the year to try to skate by until the playoffs to preserve his body. I think he'll still get plenty of usage each game. David Njoku here at number 11. He really had a good end of the season when the backup quarterback came in, Joe Flacco, who ended up winning Comeback Player of the Year. So got a great performance out of his quarterback. Let's see if the starting quarterback can have that same connection with David Njoku. But this is someone who's always had the talent. For some reason, we just were not getting the fantasy points. Next, we have Tier C, Jake Ferguson at tight end 12, Dalton Schultz, Dallas Goedert. Jake Ferguson, he's with the Dallas Cowboys, and they've been one of the most potent offenses over the past few years. And I really like his role. Last year, they did draft a tight end in the second round, and it was Jake Ferguson's first year as a starter. So Dallas was making sure they had insurance there. But it looks like Jake Ferguson really took off with that role in the playoffs. He was heavily relied upon and had multiple touchdowns. So I think his role is safe for this year. CeeDee Lamb's the number 1 target, but Jake Ferguson seems to be that number 2 target with Brandon Cooks, who is the number 3, getting a little bit older. We'll see who the Dallas Cowboys draft here. But again, I don't think the rookies are going to take over in year 1. So at least for this year, I think Ferguson's in a good spot. He doesn't have the dedicated draft capital, and there is that other tight end behind him. So it's someone that in season, maybe someone you can shop around if you can pivot for a tight end within the same tier. Dalton Schultz does have that long-term security. So I'll go ahead and jump into Schultz at tight end 13, re-signing with the Texans. Really, and he was the former Dallas Cowboys tight end and proved that he could help CJ Stroud get along in his rookie year, even though I would credit CJ Stroud with most of that. Still, Texans don't want to mess with something that's not broken. Make sure they've got someone that CJ Stroud can rely upon. So I say, even though at age 28 for the next 3 years, you've got a tight end attached to CJ Stroud. I looked at the numbers. Schultz is not scoring more than a lot of these other tight ends in the same range. So I'm not overvaluing Schultz, and I do expect the Texans to get more weapons. They had injuries, so when those weapons come back, how much are they relying upon Schultz? They've improved the run game. So I'm not long-term sold on Schultz. If you're a rebuilder, I'm absolutely looking to move off of him. I know tight ends can last until they're 35 and things like that. I just don't want to base, the fact that he's on the Texans as a reason to overrate him. Only 10 points a game, nothing crazy there. It's what you want from your tight end. You're hoping to get lucky with the touchdown. I'm just not overpaying to go out and acquire Dalton Schultz. Dallas Goedert, unfortunately with the Eagles, it's more of a run team. They've got these 2 great receivers, so most of the pass volume goes to them. Goedert gets what's left. He's been okay for fantasy, but has had so much time to prove whether or not he can be better than some of the other tight ends around him. And it's really just the offense. I believe in the the athleticism and skill set of the player, just more of the offense and how they run things. In Tier D, we've got Pat Freiermuth at tight end 15, Luke Musgrave, Michael Mayer, Jatavian Sanders, Cole Kmet. Pat Freiermuth, I believe, should be in Tier C. He's right now the number 2 target in his option with Russell Wilson, who historically doesn't throw to the tight end a lot. But there's a big vacancy there, and I don't see a rookie coming in to fill that void. So I do like Pat Freiermuth for this year. We just haven't seen the production historically from him, but I think it's all there. He's really athletic. And on to Luke Musgrave. He's a big athletic tight end as well. Had some injuries. There's some competition between him and Tucker Kraft for potentially the tight end one. We've seen the second tight end with the Ravens end up being the number 1 tight end in Mark Andrews back in the day. So we've seen this happen before in other instances. Michael Mayer, young tight end, really good blocker. We'll see if he ends up developing into a role where he's relied upon more in the pass game. Right now, he's the 3rd target. Let's hope for a good season there. We've got Jatavian Sanders, rookie out of University of Texas. He had really good hands in college and not super fast when the combine happened, but he still has a 8.06 RAS. I like that. He was 15th in fantasy points in college with 81, and I think he could be good. It's just going to depend on the landing spot for him. Cole Kmet was someone that was in the C tier, but happens to drop down a little bit just due to the fact that they've added Keenan Allen, and there's just much more competition for targets. On to the next tier, we've got Isaiah Likely at tight end 20, Ben Sinnott, Tucker Kraft, Theo Johnson, Cade Otton, Noah Fant, Hunter Henry, Juwan Johnson, Chigoziem Okonkwo. Isaiah Likely, really athletic, stepped in for Mark Andrews when he went down and was scoring about 20 points per game, so he looked really good. Ben Sinnott, he got a 9.49 RAS score and was number 3 in fantasy points in college with 103. I like what he can do. Tucker Kraft, he's in that backup role, but just like Likely, it's a player that could elevate at some point in the future. Theo Johnson, he had the all-time RAS score with a 9.99. So I like just taking a chance on him, seeing what he can do. Cade Otton, he's someone that's viewed as a leader within the Bucs organization. But still, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, that's tough competition for him to overcome. Noah Fant, he's the 4th option for the receivers at the Seahawks land. But I've always liked him. Now that all the other tight ends are gone onto new teams, maybe he gets an opportunity. I just wouldn't prioritize him. Hunter Henry, he's the starter for the Patriots. He might be the number 2 target there. They just don't have a lot of options. We'll see who they draft. Juwan Johnson, really it was Taysom Hill getting in the way for a lot of his production. And Taysom Hill got phased out at the end of the last season. He was injured a little bit. We'll see how that goes. But Taysom is a lot older than you might know, I think in the 33 range. So, maybe his time is winding down since a lot of his game was dependent upon athleticism. And Chigoziem Okonkwo is still young, going to be the 3rd or 4th option in the passing game for the Titans, but Will Levis can really throw the ball, so it does seem to be a pass-first team at least. And in this next tier F, we've got Cade Stover at tight end 29, Dallin Holker, Tyler Conklin, Jonnu Smith, Greg Dulcich, Jared Wiley, Jaheim Bell, Dawson Knox. Cade Stover, he has a 8.33 RAS, was 11th in college fantasy points with 88. Dallin Holker, a 7.36 RAS, but he was number 1 this past season with fantasy points with 119. Tyler Conklin is going to be paired with Aaron Rodgers. He's been consistent the past 2 or 3 years. I like Conklin just as a guy that you're just hoping for a touchdown for, or a few catches. Jonnu Smith, he's going to be with the Miami Dolphins, which seems to be the team that uses the tight end the least. I think they're the 2nd fewest passes going to the tight end. Not necessarily great, but he's good blocker. That's why they've got him. Greg Dulcich had a lot of promise, was injured this past season. He's the tight end 1 with the Broncos. They don't have a quarterback, but we'll see what goes on there. Don't want to completely give up, but we'll see. Jared Wiley out of TCU, he had the number 5 overall amount of fantasy points for tight ends this past season and has a 9.52 RAS score. That was 101 fantasy points. And Jaheim Bell, 8.5 RAS score. He had 69 fantasy points. And Dawson Knox, backup for the Bills. If there's an injury or something like that, maybe he's got a role. He did end up getting a contract extension, so they do still like him. And that'll do it for our tight end rankings for the 2024 season pre-draft. And so we'll see how these things shake up. Please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.